You know, once I got this idea to start making football breakdowns, my first video I made was one about Aaron Jones, and in hindsight, it's definitely far from my best. I haven't been doing this for too long, however, I definitely have come a long way since then, and so I kind of decided, hey, maybe I should make another video about Aaron Jones. There's clearly a lot to talk about there, and I can actually get more in depth now that I'm making more 10-minute plus videos, so I figured, hey, why not make a video about Aaron Jones, and so that's what I'm doing. One of the things that I mentioned in that video is that Aaron Jones has some insane acceleration. I mean, this guy's acceleration is really what makes him such an effective player, and this first play will be a good example of that. So basically what's going to happen here is it's going to be a run through the left side of the screen, and it's going to be all one-on-one blocks in that direction. So basically if every Packer makes their block, this could actually end up being a home run type play. It can at least allow you to potentially get to the defensive backs before getting tackled. That's basically the way this is designed to work. However, one notable thing is going to happen once this play develops. Take a look at what's going on right there. So what's supposed to happen here is that Packers offensive lineman is supposed to block that Redskins linebacker, but what's going to end up actually happening is that linebacker is actually going to cut to the right, and now he's going to get around that Packers offensive lineman. This is interesting because on one hand, he can get around that block. However, the downside, of course, is that if he doesn't have the speed and acceleration to keep up with Aaron Jones, this now means that he could essentially just take himself out of the play. But one thing you'll notice about Jones is that because of acceleration, a lot of guys would be right there right now, but because Jones was able to get to his top speed quick enough, now he's already basically a yard further than a lot of guys would be. This now means that that Redskins linebacker has to move over to the right side of the screen, making it much more difficult for him to actually be able to make a tackle. So because of that, Jones is able to still run over and get through that gap before finally getting brought down after a very solid gain. I mean, that's just acceleration more than anything. Sometimes as a linebacker, you try to just get around that offensive lineman any way possible and just expect that you can then have the speed to keep up with someone and make a tackle. Because it's not a straight up foot race there, you just have to beat him to the spot. However, Jones is so fast that he's able to run and get to that spot even quicker than that linebacker was able to. It also should be mentioned that it's not just his acceleration that makes him effective, it's his acceleration paired with his footwork that makes him such an effective player in this league. This one will again show you what I mean. It's once again going to be one-on-one matchups all across that left side of the screen, and it is going to be a run in that direction. So once this play develops, he goes through that hole. However, there's a kind of a problem happening right now. That Redskins linebacker does a pretty good job of realizing what's going on here and saying, hey, this is the run to the left side of the screen, so I need to get to the left side of the screen of that offensive lineman, so that way he can't really do much. He's either pushing me into the way where Aaron Jones is going to be, or he's not pushing me at all, but then either way I can make the tackle. So despite the fact that Jones did a pretty good job of accelerating and getting through that gap pretty quickly, that's kind of all he was really able to do there. Oftentimes, the running back, all you can really do is just try to maximize whatever the offensive line gives you, and here the offensive line only gave him about a 5-yard pickup or so. Except, every now and then you can make a better move, and look how he's going to be able to basically cut back in and pick up even more yards. Again, not a ton more, but that footwork is insane. I mean, be able to pick up an extra 5 yards just from one move is definitely huge. But especially considering the fact that he had to maneuver around the Packers offensive lineman and around another Redskins player before getting tackled. I mean, that's just great footwork more than anything. I mean, the fact that this guy hasn't gotten more carries over his career is really quite head-scratching, because, I mean, this guy averaged 5.5 yards per attempt, both in 2018 and in 2017. He actually led the league in average rushing yards per attempt, and granted, it should be mentioned that stat is a tiny bit misleading. I mean, if you're one of those teams that has a running back who you run the plays through, like an Ezekiel Elliott with the Cowboys, then your average rushing yards per attempt is going to go down just because you're going to be running the ball a lot more. Therefore, the defense will be less surprised when you do run the ball, which means that your average rushing yards per attempt will probably go down, although your total yards will definitely go up, obviously. But still, I mean, leading the league in rushing yards per attempt is still leading the league in rushing yards per attempt. No matter which way you look at it, it's definitely a great stat to have when you're talking about Aaron Jones. And especially now with this Matt LaFleur style offense, which loves to run the ball, I can definitely see him being a key piece in that puzzle. But I could sit here and criticize the Green Bay Packers coaching staff for not running Aaron Jones enough, but I do have to give them a little bit of credit from time to time. I mean, they did call plays that worked to Aaron Jones' benefit from time to time, and this one would be a good example of that. Once again, it's all one-on-one blocks on the right side of the screen. You'll see a lot of one-on-one blocks of Aaron Jones because, you know, he is a home run hitter, so you might as well do that kind of thing. But really the key block to take a look at will be the Packers left guard right over there. That's Lane Taylor, and take a look at what he's going to do here. He's basically just going to allow that Redskins player to move to his left, but now be in position to push that Redskins player just a little bit more to the left. Against a back that doesn't accelerate as quickly, this could be a very bad idea, but because they trust Aaron Jones' acceleration abilities so much, they're saying, hey, let's just do this. We know he'll get to a top speed quickly, so it won't matter. Although also worth mentioning, one slight problem I would have with this is that Packers right guard didn't really get out as far as he probably should have on display. Again, it's a tough play to make, but basically what's going to happen right now is that Redskins player is going to be able to move over to the left side of the screen and try to get into display. But even despite that, Jones is still able to get past that Redskins player, and it's not until a safety that he gets brought down. Even when the safety brought him down, he was still able to sort of fall forward and pick up a solid gain. So definitely, as a whole, just a tremendous play by Jones. One more thing that's important in a running back is having patience. Yes, obviously acceleration is key, speed, but sometimes you have to know when to get to that top speed, and sometimes when you don't have to get to that top speed. Every now and then plays take a little bit longer to develop, and you have to make sure you give your blockers time to make sure they make their blocks, and I'll show you what I'm talking about with this play. What Green Bay is going to do is have their right tackle and a tight end double team that ram right over there, and then the tight end will move out to block that linebacker who's over there. As you see, it takes the tight end a little bit longer than you would like for him to make that block, and now the linebacker is actually closer to the line of scrimmage than typically you would like on this play. So if you notice Aaron Jones, he hasn't ran that far forward, he's kind of just hanging back a little bit. Although also worth mentioning is that tight end is actually going to come back and make a very good block at the end of this. I mean, that's just a textbook great block. And because of Aaron Jones' patience, he's now right at the line of scrimmage and hasn't been touched at all. And of course, because he has that great combination of patience and acceleration, look at what he's able to do after he gets through that gap. He's able to accelerate and pick up a ton of yards. So that was good blocking by Green Bay for sure, but it was also a good job by Aaron Jones of maximizing the good blocking. I think a lot of guys who don't really know what they were doing would have just ran as fast as they could and maybe would have still... I think a lot of guys... Some guys might have ran as fast as they possibly could have and not waited for that hole to open up. There's also some guys that would have waited but then just wouldn't have the physical skill set to make sure they can get through that gap. But Aaron Jones has both, and that's how we're able to pick up as many yards as possible. Really being patient, and more so just being a smart runner, is very important in a running back. You want to be able to know what you're supposed to do at all times. A lot of plays have a design hole where you're supposed to run through, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have a design time you're supposed to get through there. It's just whenever the blockers make their blocks and make their hole as big as possible. But not just that, but sometimes you have to know when to not run through the hole that the play is designed to run through, and this play is one of those. It's supposed to be a run to the right side of the screen, and that's the blocking concept on the left side of the screen. The reason why I'm showing you the blocking concept on the left side of the screen, even though it's supposed to be run to the right side of the screen, is because of that ram right there who's going to be left unblocked. It's of course something you will do, leave the edge rusher unblocked if it's a run in the opposite direction. However, take a look at what that Rams edge rusher is going to do on this play. He kind of runs basically straight down at first and then starts running over to the right side of the screen. Now, typically, you want to make sure you don't go up containment and allow the running back to be able to run around you to the left side of the screen. However, he ran too far over to that side where now there is potentially a gap on that left side of the screen. It's supposed to be a run to the right side of the screen, but Jones looks over and says, hey, there's room for me over here. I can run to the left side of the screen instead. And notice how he's not only able to do that, but he has that ability to keep a top speed while changing directions very well. That's not easy to do, but he kind of made it look easy there. I mean, he cut over to the left side of the screen, but then cut over to the right side of the screen very quickly to really maximize the amount of yards he was able to gain. That's something you might see a lot in like a kick returner, where that's obviously a position where it's very important to keep a top speed and be able to change directions as much as possible. If you watch my video on Cordell Patterson, you can definitely see how that can be effective on those types of plays, but it also matters a lot as a running back. Again, it's obviously not the most important thing, but it matters, and it can actually turn some decent gains into huge gains if it's done correctly, and I'll show you what I mean with this play. As you see right off the bat, it's actually kind of a great situation for the Packers, because all they have to do is send their center right out there to block that linebacker, and then Jones can run straight up the middle, and there'll be no one around him. Because Jones is so far over to the right side of the screen, has his hands on his knees like that, the Rams are kind of expecting it to be a passing play, and Jones either is going to be blocking or running a route. But because this is going to be a delay play, this is actually great for the Packers. So he's going to get past that line, but really want to take a look at how he's able to change directions while maintaining a top speed. See, right now, he cuts over to the left, but then look at how he's able to cut back to the right to get around that defensive back and walk into the end zone for a touchdown. It's a relatively simple move, but it's not easy to pull off, which is why you rarely see guys being able to pull that off. I kind of alluded to Jones' home run hitting ability earlier, but that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about home run hitting ability. The ability to turn what should just be a 7-yard gain into a touchdown. Here's another example of that home run hitting ability. This time it also involves vision. It's going to be a run to the left side of the screen, but there's one block in particular I'm going to want you to take a look at. Or maybe I should say the lack of a block, because if you look, that Falcon easily gets by his intended man. So against a lot of guys, that Falcon could easily just run over and make a tackle pretty easily. However, there is one way Jones can make this work. If he accelerates quick enough to get past that Falcon and maybe cuts to the right side of the screen, he can get by everybody. However, that's obviously a very difficult thing to pull off. Not only does he have to realize what he has to do right now, but then he has to also have the athleticism to pull it off. But of course, I wouldn't be showing this play if he wasn't able to do that, and that's exactly what he is able to do. Not just that, but he's able to break a tackle and get into the end zone for another touchdown. Again, plays like that are really just what makes him such an effective halfback, and are a big reason why he's going to be such a huge part of that Packers offense next season. I mean, he was a huge part of that Packers offense last season too, but I think this guy actually has Pro Bowl level talent. He's kind of just one of those guys where he does everything right, and this one will be another example of him doing everything right. The first thing I actually want you to take a look at is that Minnesota Viking right there, and the reason for it is because they're actually going to pull the tight end over to the right side of the screen because he's the one in charge of blocking that Minnesota Vikings player. However, one thing you'll notice is that Packer who's in charge of blocking that Minnesota Vikings player is actually going to be a little bit lower to the bottom half of the screen than maybe you would like, and that's going to allow that Vikings player to basically run around him to the top half of the screen. screen. I'm actually not sure how much I would blame that Packers player, because usually you don't expect the guy to completely give up containment like that, but because he is giving up containment, what does that mean for Aaron Jones? Well, it means that despite this being a run to the left side of the screen, if he realized what's going on, he could cut to the right side of the screen. Again, that's a tough play to realize what's going on that quickly, but Jones does realize what's going on that quickly, runs to the right side of the screen, and picks up yet another big gain. It's plays like that that really make all the difference in the world. I mean, let's be honest, anyone can run through a big enough hole. However, when the hole isn't there, or just when it's not the hole that you were expecting to run through, if you can still realize what's going on, that can allow you to pick up so many more yards. And of course, if you are able to pick up more yards through the running game, that means that things can open up more in the passing game. One more way that Jones' skill set can be effective is something like this. It's going to be a pitch play where we're just going to pitch it to the top half of the screen, and the way it works is that those two Packers right there are each going to block those two Vikings who are over there, and then Green Bay is going to pull their left tackle up to the top half of the screen to block the first Viking who's in that area, which will probably end up being that Minnesota Viking. So then the idea basically is just that Aaron Jones should be able to outrun everybody else. That's the way this play is supposed to work. But of course, there is obviously that element of surprise if you don't exactly know which way they're going to go. So right off the bat, that Viking doesn't really do the perfect job of knowing exactly what the play is. So this now means that while Aaron Jones, despite being about a yard further behind him to the bottom half of the screen, can now run up to the top half of the screen, and again, he has to cut the corner as well. So that Viking has less room to go, but there also is a Packer who's able to be blocking. Not to mention Aaron Jones is really fast, so this play is just not going to work for Minnesota at all. It's a great end zone situation, and as you see, it worked easily. Jones was basically able to walk in for the touchdown. It's kind of what makes him such an effective player. I mean, knock on wood that he stays healthy, I fully believe that he could easily be a 1,000-yard rusher next year.